more and better services. We have, though, seen some lost, as the industries had to suspend some services while they catch up on driver training lost during the pandemic. Strikes just takes us back to the 1970s. So will the Prime Minister's focus on the future ensure that we have apprenticeship schemes focusing on engineering and driver training to ensure that we recover the services lost and we have an industry that's focused upon efficiency and embraces technology for the future?
My right honourable friend knows exactly what he speaks, and we're doing just that. We're reforming driver training to make entry into the sector simpler, whilst continuing, of course, to make sure that we meet vital safety requirements.
We now come to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Labour Party as we mark armed services? We can thank all our service personnel for the services that they give. Mr. Speaker, on Windrush Day, we celebrate all those who have made Scotland and the UK their home. My party backs calls for a major commemoration for the 75th anniversary next year, so we can properly mark the valued contribution that those that came here have made. Mr. Speaker, this morning it was revealed that UK inflation is now at a 40-year high. Families right across these islands are seeing their income squeezed as prices rise, bills soar and Tory cuts and tax hikes hammer home. After 12 years in government, the Tories have left the UK economy in the doldrums and pushed millions of people into poverty. So, can I ask the Prime Minister, does he think his government bears any blame for the fact that the United Kingdom is doing so much worse than our European neighbours?
Actually, Mr. Speaker, I think the whole House knows and the whole country knows we've got a global inflationary problem, but this government has the fiscal firepower to deal with it, Mr. Speaker, and that is, I think, of benefit to the whole of the United Kingdom, including Scotland, as we've seen throughout the pandemic. And I think it's a matter of fact that taxes are actually highest of all in Scotland, Mr. Speaker.
Ian Blackford.
Well, actually, that is not true, Mr. Speaker. But of course, the Prime Minister can make all the excuses he likes. But the fact is, the UK economy is lagging behind on his watch. Actually, if he looks at France, inflation is less than 6% there. This morning's report from the Resolution Foundation and the London School of Economics is the latest in a string of devastating reports on the outlook for the UK economy. The report could not be clearer. The Tory government's disastrous Brexit is driving wages down, pushing inflation up, and will make us poorer over the next decade. But instead of reversing course, the Prime Minister is recklessly threatening a trade war at the worst possible time. Will he finally come to his senses and negotiate an economic agreement with the EU, or is he going to woefully push the UK into recession?
Mr. Speaker, nobody wants a trade war, nor is there any need for one. But I think I'm afraid he's underestimating what this country is currently achieving. Not just the Moderna investment, but a record venture capital investment in this country, which has now overtaken China, Mr. Speaker, as a venue for venture capital investment, and not to say nothing of what we're getting in tech. And that, of course, Mr. Speaker, the benefits of that are being felt throughout the whole of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much support the work of this government to level up all parts of the United Kingdom, including Scotland and my own constituency in the Scottish Borders. For the Scottish Borders, improved transport connectivity is the key to levelling up. So will the Prime Minister reconfirm his government's support for improvements to the cross-border A1 road, and also the feasibility study to extend the Borders Railway to Hoyt, Newcastleton and on to Carlisle?
I thank him for an excellent piece of lobbying, and I can tell him that we're looking, certainly the Department of Transport is working with Transport Scotland on the possible extension of the Borders Railway to Carlisle, and on the A1 a decision is to be made later this year.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's emerged that there is a backlog of 23,000 applications under the Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy, with just 2 of 3,000 applications for refuge by Afghans who worked for Britain processed since April. Yet at the same time, staff working on the Arab scheme have been slashed by a quarter since December. This is an incredible betrayal of the Afghan people who put their lives on the line to work for our country. So I still have casework many people from the Chevening alumni, for example, who've been promised support since September. Can I send those cases to him? Will he put more resources into the scheme, and will he lift the cap on the ACRS scheme so that we can finally do our best for the people of Afghanistan?
I thank her very much, but I think I'm afraid that she's underestimating what this country is already doing for the people of Afghanistan. And I think on Armed Forces Day we should celebrate pitting that brought 15,000 out. I'm of course very happy to look at the cases that she wants to raise, and we will do our best for them and for their families, Mr. Speaker. But this House should be in no doubt of the generous welcome that we continue to give to people from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Ukraine, from Hong Kong. We have a record to be very proud of.
Andy Carter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Chapelford, in Penketh, in Great Sankey and in Appleton all tell me they want to see more police officers, tackling issues like antisocial behaviour, tackling issues like domestic abuse and burglary. And thanks to the initiatives of John Dwyer, the excellent Police and Crime Commissioner in Cheshire, and sustained recruitment by the new Chief Constable, the hard work of our police officers is paying off, with almost a 50% increase in arrests for domestic abuse in Cheshire over the last 12 months compared to the last 12 months. Can my right honourable friend update the House on how many more officers have been recruited in both Cheshire and across the UK since he became the Prime Minister? And will he join me in recognising...
Mr. Prime Minister, can I just say, other members do want to get in. The longer the question, the less will get in. Your friendship will dwindle if you carry on like that. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell him very briefly, it's 13,576 more police officers, 200 more in Cheshire, Mr. Speaker. But what they're also doing, Mr. Speaker, is they're cutting neighbourhood crime already by 31%. Our streets are getting safer as a result.
Sorry.
Thank you. A clear majority of members of the Northern Ireland Assembly reject the government's protocol bill and the Prime Minister's rationale for it. And businesses fear its consequences. This Prime Minister has made clear on multiple occasions his commitment, so-called, to all aspects of the Good Friday Agreement.
Consensus.
That includes the European Convention on Human Rights being part of domestic law. So how can he stand over that commitment when the Justice Secretary is about to publish a bill that unpicks and disapplies the Human Rights Act within our domestic law? He can't have it both ways.
I think if the honourable gentleman will just wait for the Justice Secretary's statement, which follows shortly, I think he will find that he is in error in what he's just said.
Alexander Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. High-wage, high-skilled jobs at the heart of my campaign to level up Rother Valley and tackle the cost of living crisis. I have personally hosted 2 job fairs, and thanks to £11 million investment from the government's Levelling Out Fund, Rother Valley will benefit from a cutting-edge skills and employment village and a leading incubator space for training apprenticeships and start-ups hosted at the old Maltby Grammar School, staff areas were neglected under Labour. In light of this, will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, pledge his support for high-wage, high-skilled Rother Valley, level up our high streets and also visit Rother Valley to see levelling up in action?
Yes, I think probably the best member for Rother Valley that we've ever had, Mr. Speaker. And I thank him very much, and we're going to continue with our agenda of levelling up across the whole country, through all the difficulties that this country has faced, and it will get young people across the country and in Rother Valley into good jobs for generations to come, and that is our ambition.
Osborne.
Speaker, tens of thousands of people were marching through London last weekend, protesting against this out-of-touch government. Rail workers are on strike, Royal Mail workers, NHS workers, teachers and even barristers are on the verge of taking industrial action. All workers are struggling to cope with the worst cost of living crisis in history. Ministers are planning to boost city bosses' pay whilst demanding wage restraint for everyone else. So can the Prime Minister tell me when is he going to stop meaningless sound bites and instead start supporting working people across our country?
If she wants to support the working people of this country, Mr. Speaker, can I suggest she gets off the picket line? Which is where she's been, and supports the and has a word with her leader, Mr. Speaker, and supports the travelling public of this country who want to see a reduction in their cost of transport, which this government is delivering.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For much of Britain, levelling up means the revitalisation of British industry and the jobs that goes with it. Many countries around the world, such as Germany and China, get a competitive advantage by burning lignite, the dirtiest form of fossil fuel. So does my right honourable friend share my concerns about the ethics of holding back British industry and exporting and magnifying our carbon emissions overseas, all in the name of net zero?
Mr. Speaker, I think we can all be proud of the way we've reduced CO2 emissions in this country, but plainly it makes no sense to be importing coal, particularly for metallurgical purposes, when we have our own domestic resources.
Louise Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister knows that we in Coventry and Warwickshire are proudly the UK's leading centre for battery vehicle innovation. He knows because he visited the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre just last year. If this government wants this vital sector to survive for the future, the Prime Minister needs to confirm his support. Will he give a concrete guarantee for the resources needed for the West Midlands Gigafactory project to go ahead, so we can deliver much-needed, skilled jobs in Coventry for 2025?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's probably the first sensible question from the opposition benches, and I can tell her, that we do actively support gigafactories because I believe they can be of huge advantage for the UK economy. That's why I'm proud to see one now in Blyth. We're working with the authorities in the West Midlands, in Coventry, to make sure that we also get a successful result there.
Sir Bill Wiggin.
Hereford Sixth Form College has over 600 students who rely on the trains to get them to their exams this week. What can my right honourable friend do to ensure that these young people doing their GCSEs and A-levels are not punished by the train strikers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know how much my right honourable friend cares for students in his constituency, and I can tell him that no exams have been cancelled as a result of the strikes so far. We expect schools and colleges to have contingency arrangements in place to manage disruption. If students arrive late, then schools should allow them to take the paper, and exam boards will determine if that paper can be marked based on how late the student is. And I'm told that, Mr. Speaker, if the student misses the exam completely, the school can apply for their grades to be calculated from the other assessments they have completed in that subject. And I hope that is helpful to my right honourable friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will be aware of the problems that arose in Paris at the European Cup final. Will he agree with me that both the French and UEFA authorities' attempts to blame Liverpool fans for the failure to keep order at the stadium has been comprehensively disproven? And will he ensure that the French failure to police the event is roundly condemned?
I thank him very much, Mr. Speaker, and I think the whole House will have seen how those initial accounts of what took place were completely debunked and proved to be incorrect in respect of the Liverpool fans, and I think it was right that the French authorities and I think UEFA issued a full apology for what took place.
Sir Desmond Swade.
Taking back control is to apply to the ECHR too, isn't it?
Mr. Speaker, I think he should wait for my right honourable friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, who will be saying a little bit about that in just a moment. But I can tell him that when it comes to the Rwanda policy that we are pursuing, that policy, Mr. Speaker, has not been ruled unlawful by any UK court, nor so far by any international court, Mr. Speaker. And we will continue with that policy.
Lyra Wilson.
Much, Mr. Speaker. The father-in-law of my constituent, Ibrahim, is a former Supreme Court judge in Afghanistan. He successfully prosecuted and put behind bars hundreds of terrorists associated with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. 7 months on since he put in his Arab application, there is no progress. He's living in hiding. His only option is a perilous journey to Pakistan, where if his visa is refused, he will be deported back into the hands of the Taliban. So, will the Prime Minister meet with me and the former judge's family to see how we can save the life of a man who I have no doubt has helped save hundreds of British lives?
Well, can I thank her very much for raising that particular case, and it does sound extremely meritorious, and I'll make sure that she gets a meeting with the Department of Defence that runs ARAP, Mr. Speaker, and that we do our best to expedite that application as fast as we can.
To Ben Spaz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to represent over 1,000 Park Home residents. When will the government address the injustice of pitch fees determined by RPI, and how is the government going to ensure they can all benefit from the energy grant?
I thank the honourable gentleman, my honourable friend. We are going to introduce legislation as soon as parliamentary time allows to change the inflationary index used in calculating the annual pitch fee to CPI. Mr. Speaker, and I'm told that the Department for Levelling Up and Housing has undertaken research on the impacts on residents and site owners of a change to the 10% commission that is currently paid on the sale of a park home.
Caroline Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister is as thrilled as I am that you, Mr. Speaker, signed the Wellbeing of Women Menopause Pledge last week to show support for women in this place. So will the Prime Minister follow Mr. Speaker's example and ensure the better access to treatment for women in England by introducing the single annual payment for HRT now, not make them wait till April 23, a full 18 months after it was first promised?
I thank her very much for raising what is a very important issue, and one that is understood keenly on all sides of this House. And I know that my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, is accelerating the work of the HRT task force to give people up and down the country the reassurance and the treatment that they need.
Final question, Dean Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was incredibly grateful that the Prime Minister launched my initiative to train 1,000 mental health first aiders in awareness in Watford over a year and a half ago, and it's being successfully delivered by Watford and West Herts Chamber of Commerce and many amazing volunteers. So I know he understands the importance of mental well-being and mental health. Sadly, bullying can have a long-lasting effect on mental health and well-being. So today, the Diana Award are raising awareness about bullying in schools and online, and with the Don't Face It Alone campaign. So will the Prime Minister please join me in encouraging any young person experiencing bullying to speak up and speak out?
Can I thank him very much and congratulate him on his own campaign on this issue. I think everybody understands that bullying is an absolutely appalling experience and something that we should not tolerate in our society. And I'm delighted to see so many colleagues, so many honourable members wearing their blue ribbons today, Mr. Speaker. We should all speak out against bullying, but we should also make sure that we give everybody the courage to speak out against bullying as well.
That ends PMQs. Those who wish to leave, please do so. Wonderful plan. No, it's important. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Nice and tight there, Mr. Speaker.
It was good. Thank you. Thanks very much. That worked well. That was good. Always worried about it. Okay. Just let people go through it. Okay. Before I call the Deputy Prime Minister to make his statement, I have to say to him and to the Government, I'm extremely disappointed that once again an important government policy has been presented to the media before this House. Why the BBC and Sky News is more important, I will never know. That is simply, and I will say again, that is simply not acceptable. One thing which did not change in the recently revised ministerial code, was the important statement: when Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance in Parliament. But yet again, the media have been the first to know. I'm glad that the Minister is making the statement, but he should have done that before speaking to the media. I would certainly have granted an urgent question, and I've got to say thank Mr Byrne putting one in just in case, had the statement not been forthcoming, and the government should be aware that I will always do this in similar circumstances. And I've got to say, I nearly granted both, and I don't want to be put in that position again. So please, respect this House, respect members of every political party. They're elected to hear it here, not via the news. Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, thank you, and I of course heed his advice as ever. We